Hello, and welcome to NAMM's Believe in Music Week. Meyer Sound is proud to join this global gathering to unify and support everyone who brings music to the world. I'm Steve Ellison, Director of Spatial Sound at Meyer Sound, and today I'm joined by electronic music icons Werner and Andi Toma, who comprise a duo Mouse on Mars. So today we will discuss Mouse on Mars' experience with spatial music and their recent experiences with Spacemap Go, the new spatial sound design and mixing iPad app from Meyer Sound. So here we are. Thank you, Jan and Andi. Really appreciate you joining us for this Q&A.
Yeah,
how are you doing? You guys doing over there? I'm here in Los Angeles, and you're in Berlin. I recognize the control room. It's been a little while. I think it's just over a year since we hung out there last February. So it's good to see you. So before we get into it, I got to say thank you for letting me preview AAI, your new work. It's really amazing. I listened to that while I was thinking about this interview, and it was really helpful, actually, because of the sonic kind of depth and textures that shift and change throughout the album. Really something else. So I heard a preview cut from this through my Apple Music feed a couple of weeks ago, so I knew it was coming, and it's great to see that it's finally dropping. So tell us a bit about AAI.
So AAI is coming out on Thrill Jockey on February 26th, and we've already released 2 singles or preview tracks. One is called The Latent Space, which is kind of the opening, the introduction track to the album. And then yesterday, basically a couple of days ago, second single dropped, which is Artificial Authentic, which is kind of like a poppy track somehow. It's light-hearted and playful, and the whole record has a theme. It's really circling around the idea of an anarchic artificial intelligence, which is the concept of artificial intelligence as a not optimized and not focused machine or problem-solving idea, but something that could grow its own ways and could communicate with us in unknown and new ways, and that in the end an AI is just another idea of humans communicating with something that humans created, same way as we communicate or interact with art or other things we build. But AI has a tendency to be like to have its own nature as well, and I think that record is kind of circling around the idea that we would embrace that nature that artificial intelligence could represent. We've collaborated with Louis Chudesoki, who's a poet and scholar from Boston, and he wrote like the basic liner, like the story of the album and the lyrics, and we've synthesized Louis's voice, and with a couple of programmers, we built an artificial intelligence actually. So an artificial intelligence on our album is telling the story of humans interacting with artificial intelligence. And besides that, it's a Mouse on Mars album that incorporates all kinds of sound sources, mostly artificial on that record. So usually we really combine acoustic instruments and anything we can get a hold of, but this is a quite synthetic record, but to us it still doesn't sound synthetic in like a clean way. It's also incorporating a lot of percussion. So it's basically synthetic sounds, artificial sounds, and percussion, and drums.
Organic, synthetic.
So what was the kind of the time range when you worked on the production of the music on the album? When did you start, and when did you kind of wrap it up?
It's hard to say. I mean, there were elements already thought, and we were thinking about to work with or like have a topic about artificial intelligence, but in a different way. And it really started when we found this company called Birds on Mars, and they built us like an interface where we could work with the voices. And yeah, then everything came together with the elements we already prepared and with all the inspiration coming from the voice. And it was very interesting development, because when we started to work, the voice was very cracky and not really, it kind of became more and more human. And yes, and then we had the idea about the rhythmic, the polyrhythmic structures. Yeah, and in the end, everything came together really nicely, and yeah, and somehow we finished the whole album.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great, and I definitely felt that the polyrhythms were really amazing. How they drove the music. When we met at Moogfest in Durham in 2018, and a quick shout out here to Kamran and also to Virginia Tech, who we all collaborated with to create really it was a lab for live spatial sound at Moogfest at the Armory in Durham. So I remember meeting you guys in the hotel. I think it was like before sound check or something. You're like, oh, you're if you remember. But yes. it was quite an experience, because we set up a multi-channel sound system, and you were performing live, and your guitars, keyboards, you also had drummer, bass player, and a vocalist. So you had a band, but you also, this was in support of Dimensional People, your previous work, and you had a lot of content that was played back in Logic and streamed right out to the system that you had encoded some spatial information already that got decoded, and that was part of that. But in addition, we live mixed you with a prototype of what ended up becoming Spacemap Go. So that's where we connected, and I know that you've explored spatial audio for quite a while. What do you find? How do you find it different why do you want to do spatial sound? Why do you want to bring these pieces, works into an environment that is more than a left-right system? What's important to you about spatial sound? Why do we care? Why should we care?
You mean like spatial mixing in terms of like having a live performance?
Yes, well, just the experience. What do you think you gain from the experience of your music when it's pulled out of in front of you to then surrounding an audience? It's a lot of work. And I know you have the opportunity now in your studio to very easily, with Spacemap Go and with the iPad, you're able to control sound and place it anywhere in the room. Just the experience of getting a sound out of 2 speakers and into multiple speakers, just how does that change perception of the work?
I think there are 2 aspects, actually. One is the physical aspect of wanting to extend the stage space, or actually your performative space, and associate with the audience. So this is what we started around Dimensional People. Actually started before we made that record with a project called Lichter, that we started like to put percussion instruments into the space, and had like a semi-live installation type situation where we were incorporating also percussion robots built by Moritz Simon Geist, aka Sonic Robots, and we developed robots with him since actually a project with Towne Braxton, which dates back like probably 8 years ago or something. And when we started working with these robots and improving like what they did and how we could incorporate them into our work, we also started like extending the space of where we wanted to put those robots. And with extending the space and with extending the performative space, we also brought something back that was always essential to our music, which is actually really imagining an infinite space when we create and work on music. What we do is how we imagine what we hear is usually an infinite field. And there we place the situations and the sonic artifacts, like pieces in a room. And we actually, that brought us back to that idea, because working with digital technology was actually hard for us, because there was a transition. I remember it really well. It came with the album Traumatic Reflections von Südenfeld. It was a project with Marky Smith, like a different band project, but it was Andi and me and Marky Smith. We created this kind of, I don't know, idea of a pop band. And that was the first record where we fully only incorporated software. Everything was done in the computer with software synthesizer, software, whatever, everything. And the first time we felt, okay, we kind of managed that challenge and it sounds good and it has the sound we want. So that was about like the late 2000s, no, actually mid 2000s, like 5 or 6. And then until the end of the 2000s, we were still like working in that realm of like, okay, we now managed this whole new challenge of like everything is software. Because if you look around in our studio, there's a lot of analog gear. We plug things, it's patch bass, it's MIDI. So there's all that outboard reality for us when we produce. But suddenly everything's in the computer and it sounds different. So we had to work nearly a decade on getting that sound straight, on mastering that. So during when we, like 2010, whatever, another interesting project started, which was working with an orchestra. We've had that commission for a piece called Pernomnion, which our friend and director, André de Ridder, had actually helped us to realize. And it was a really big project for a really big orchestra. We had 2 incarnations in the US as well, one with Chicago Symphony and one at the Kennedy Center. And that took us a couple of years actually, until we finally around like 2000 and I don't know, when there was like, anyway, a couple of years ago, we kind of got back to where it all started to us, which was really the conscious space where you place sound events and where you draw these connections. Some things run in sync, some things just pop up once, some are more like atmospheric sounds like field recordings or microphone situations. Others are completely generated, and we've obviously always worked with generated sounds and synthesized sounds from the beginning, but we had that mix. So we got back to that, creating these mixes. So that was also the time when spatial audio became more accessible. It was actually difficult before. Wavefield synthesis was exclusive to a specific room here in Berlin, run by the Technical University. Obviously, we went there and were listening to pieces, compositions made deliberately for that space. We did experiments with like speakers, trying different things, creating feedbacks with speakers, building speakers, or like reconfiguring speakers. But suddenly that whole spatial technology was available and we immediately engaged with it. And where we are now is actually a bridge to where the band first started and how we can actually really realize it in the studio within an extended sound reality, which for us has never been ideally stereo.
Great. So now, and I encourage viewers here at NAMM to go to the Meyer Sound website, and there's a video interview with the 2 of you where you can see the studio, the live room, where Spacemap Go system is installed. You're in the so in that room there are, I believe, 14 UP4s. 12 of them are on the walls and 4 overhead, and then there are 2 subwoofers, 1 on each end of the room. So you can basically walk in there and then with the iPad go ahead and mix some sound in space. What has that been like? Have you, just in terms of improvising or listening or exploring, how have you used Spacemap Go in the live room, which is not a large room, but it's a really comfortable room. So how does it feel to mix in that room in space? And then how might that inform what you do, how you perform perhaps, or how you compose? Just what have you learned so far?
Now, what we did recently is like to mix parts of our new album, of the AAI album, and it was very comfortable and actually very easy to work with the system, because it's much more easy to mix a song in a surround situation than having a stereo situation. One reason is like the resolution is much higher. If you have like dance music, I mean very dance music with lots of elements, you can spread it in the room, and actually also like from the way you want to hear the music, there's not really like a standard. You can mix it the way you want it, the way you feel, and it always kind of will be right for the people listening to it. Also, it depends for the listener where he's standing, because it depends on where you stand in the system. But yeah, it's kind of like being inside a band situation, standing on stage or whatever. And yeah, mixing this thing also is also for the reason for us. The reason for us is like our goal would be like to perform in the center of a 360-degree system, which is very ideal because you don't need monitors. And for me, the most important point is the music you hear is the same. It's the same situation as the listeners, as the audience is hearing this situation. So you're not feeling that disconnected as we feel when we do like a stage show with monitors. The sound is always totally different than the sound in the audience. So when we mixed our album, it was always like sensing how it would be like performing in the center of a room, surrounded by the system, by the Spacemap Go, and yeah, being with the audience, having the same audio, the same sound, you know.
So yeah, and you made a really good point there about it's easier, and I totally agree. In my experience, that yes, mixing for spatial is easier than mixing in stereo, because instruments can find their own place spatially, you know.
Yeah.
And so when you bring it, here's a difference though. If you're in the studio mixing your album, you're playing back content that you've already recorded or produced, and you're playing it back, and you have the iPad, and you're mixing where sound is placed and where it goes, how it moves, you know, which is, you're in a kind of certain headspace. It's still very creative, but you're not like strumming a guitar or, you know, playing a keyboard. So if you're performing, at least when I saw you perform Dimensional People, you were part of the performance of performing instruments. So how would you envision spatial control in a live setting when your hands are tied? Would you make presets, or would you trust a spatial mixer as part of the band? I mean, could you see that happening, where your spatial mixer is a band member? You know?
We would like to create instruments for spatial audio. That's like the next thing that we would love to do. Especially now working with the AI on creating a voice. It would be amazing if we could spatialize that voice, so you would really be inside the throat space. And that's the thing. There are really many aspects to what you can do and how you can actually pursue a route through spatial audio. You can think about the narrative and say, where in stereo you would be in a very linear world of this comes then, or things happen at the same time. In spatial audio, you could say, we can actually have that come, like stay over there. We can have this meet that and move, like meet in the middle or something. This can stay, then this can go over there, this can extend and this can shrink. And you have totally different dynamics in size and dimension. But you can also really focus on a specific sound. I want that sound, I want to be in that sound. So at a very particular moment, you want to really be inside the brass. And that has always been a dream. We've worked, like we just did this interview with a museum in Munich where we're showing a spatial installation in this summer. And it's a rather large space. For that, we're actually developing our own speakers situation. They're more like objects, and we're like shooting sounds via walls. And when we did that interview, we were explaining how we understand that spatiality, basically. And I totally lost the point.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna.
Technically, it just depends how. Wait, I have to. It depends on the performance you're doing. If it's like for instance, for our album, if we would perform it, I could imagine like to have somebody who can adjust the mix in a live situation, which means actually also he has to be on stage. So then it's more, the mixer becomes more like an instrument, which it is for us anyway. But the interesting thing is also, if you have time and you have a show, you can really pre-program movements, specifically in the moment, how you need it. And then the live performance you do, like percussion, drumming, or sounds, would be added and may be controlled by a person who's doing the sound.
Okay, so I'm gonna follow up on a couple of things, Jan, that you said. One is that certainly Spacemap Go is like fully controllable with open sound control. So it's ready for someone to develop a custom instrument. Let's say it's an electronic trombone, and you have and somebody's playing the trombone, and you can get that position of the trombone, of the slider on the trombone. That could be mapped to, for instance, the crossfade between two space maps. So you could basically position the sound somewhere, and then as they're playing, it's shifting the mix in the room, because since spacemaps can be created that either represent the loudspeaker layout, like like a 5-1, or just laying out the loudspeakers, or a space map can be something more abstract, so that as you move through the space map, it's going from one speaker to many speakers or something. So Jan, I think what you're saying, Spacemap Go is really set up for that kind of custom spatial instrument creation. And then, Andi, what you're talking about, the kind of the live mixing, you can build. That was when we created the prototype that we used at Moogfest with you. We had 3 or 4 iPads set up at once.
Yeah,
so it was like a big dog spatial console. So you can do that with Spacemap Go, and you could basically have a iPad per band member. And it could be set up. So I think anything is possible, and so we certainly all look forward to the time when live performances can happen again. And
also in terms, if you think in terms of a dub show, you can like the effect parameters for like echo and reverb can be totally invented in a new way, and also be created live, either with maybe with a magic stick. You have a sound, you throw it, and with the algorithm of kind of yes, that billiard. What's it?
Yeah.
Snooker.
Yeah.
Like a snooker algorithm. The echoes are like yeah, represented in the corners, and
Yeah.
the dynamic you use like algorithms of dynamics, and you can throw sounds. This would be it's very sportive.
It's really funny because like next to the screen we have a paper that Lee Scratch Perry was drawing when we were recording with him, and that was another idea that with Lee Scratch Perry we should actually create a spatial version of what we've done together.
A futuristic.
So he could actually, like make the dub explode in space. And that paper is really amazing. It's a little sketch sheet by him. And it's just next to the screen here, and says like, Spatial 1936. Denno Sari Kit, Mouse on Mars in space. Denno.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I mean, we're on it, and also your example with the trombone brought me back to what I wanted to say, because the interview with the museum was about like a show that they had supported, where they had musicians walking around in the museum and playing the instruments. And I said, yes, that's a great concept, but what we would like to do is like have every audience member hold a microphone and a monitor system and be able to like listen to the instrument and kind of crawl into the vibrations of the strings or the vibrations of the metal of the trombone or whatever. And then actually ideally even zoom into that, have a real-time analysis, and then have like a granular synthesis in real time. So you'd actually zoom into certain spectra and open them up. And I think that's all kind of like a fantasy you would have as a listener or composing listener. But we think Spacemap could be a part of that as well. Spatial audio could really give you that. And that's what we would like to work on. That's one thing to mix something that you imagined as a record, like AAI, Dimensional People. There's a couple of other projects that we're trying for the system right now. But it's also something to really develop a complete instrument only for that experience in space. You could still then again, obviously mix it with other instruments and do like mix sound files, so to speak, with the system. But to have the system be a real-time instrument, you know, like generating sound in real time and expanding that, or dynamizing,
Right.
dynamifying, I have no idea. Dynamifying that in real time. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. I know that you, in addition to your Mouse on Mars work, that you work as a team to produce these projects. You have your own projects as well. And Jan, we just finished working with you and with your with Casey Rees on a presentation of compressed cinema, which is a collaboration with you and Casey, who's also based here in Los Angeles, and that's installed at Bitform's gallery in New York City through mid-February, through February 14th, I believe. So what struck me about this, and I just want to mention this because sometimes when we think about spatial audio, you think, oh, I need like 16 speakers, or I need all this, but that's not always the case. What we did for this gallery was it's stereo content, you know, music that you produced as the audio component of this with video. There are 2 screens, and there are 5 loudspeakers positioned in the room such that when you're looking at either of these 2 screens, you have kind of an independent quad. And then the audio and the video is played back from QLab into the Galaxy over AVB. And it's a very simple setup. It's a Mac Mini, it's a Galaxy, and it's a subwoofer and 5 speakers. And when we kind of prototyped it here with Casey in Los Angeles, I mean, I was struck just by how much more engaging it was to kind of spatially extrude this into a 4-channel system. So have you thought about, I don't know if it's spatial resolution is the word, but just the scalability of your work? Like you have ambitious projects, and whether it's in the symphony hall with your percussion robots set up everywhere, or even like Moogfest, where you've brought up all this gear, and then, but wait, there's more, we have robots. so you had to get those. What do you have to say to people who are getting into spatial audio, and maybe just have a few speakers? Do you have any advice or any thoughts about getting into spatial?
The thing is really is like, once you understand that sound and music is just one iteration of sound. It is really, it's really a small piece of like a really delicious and large cake. And we're so programmed to like think of streaming formats and resolutions and like which player to use and then which headphones to get, where we can actually experience sound in real. I mean, it's never boring when you listen. Like that's like a thing that I figured out quite early. Like when I'm sitting somewhere and I'm bored, I switch into listening mode, and it just isn't boring. You start like, the more you listen, the more colors you see, and you hear like the hum of the neon. You can hear like just like tiny whatever, like pipes in the room and so on. Suddenly your whole scenario is actually extending, and it's infinite. You're actually able to hear in such a distance, and we're not used to it, because since the Renaissance times, we think that everything that is artistically or is relevant to us artistically or as information is brought to us within a room. We're very room obsessed. And even with spatial audio, we usually either we're synthesize rooms, or we try to get close to like a certain room image or idea. You know, we have all the these whatever response algorithms and so on. But you know, space is not a room. Space is our attention and our ability to connect acoustic situations and acoustic events and make them plausible, make sense of them. And making sense of them, that is really something that you only do that through listening. So it's a long overture to a very short answer to your question, which is like, there is no vast and elaborate or small and minimal. I've just used like 2 MX4P Meyers for an installation in Nuremberg, which opens in May. And I'm actually using 20 times 2 of those speakers. So these like small MX4Ps, like this little square speakers. I'm sure you got one in your pocket.
Yeah, hold on, I'm gonna grab one.
One in your jeans, like 2.
In the bathroom.
Yeah, cowboy style. Show me your MX4P.
All right, great. This is an unplanned prop, but this is a MM4XP, which it's really handy.
And it's a beautiful speaker because it's really nice in a gallery situation or in a museum situation. It's not taking much attention, but it obviously represents sound in a modest way. And for that piece, which is in the Germanic National Museum, it's like it's the biggest German-speaking museum for objects. Like it's Ice Age and early mankind findings, and then it's like the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and then it goes more local, and it kind of situates the birth of the whatever you call it, German nation. It's in their life room.
It's
in the plug board.
Okay, power is low. I come back.
And I invited a friend, a percussionist from Benin, who's an expert in voodoo, to like come and see the exhibition with me and respond to the pieces in the exhibition with voodoo talks. So basically talking to the objects, activating the objects through the language that he speaks through his bata, which is a 2-sided drum, a lower and a larger skin. And so we went to like 20 rooms in the museum. I think there's a couple more, maybe even 10 more or something. It's just gigantic. And in each room, we had the curators explain what's happening in the room, what's on display. And then Tunde was reflecting and we were talking, and he said, okay, I got it. I have my talk. And then he sat down and played, and we recorded the drum with 2 mono microphones on each skin. And then I just took the recordings that we made and played each skin through 1 mm4 XP,
Yes.
and take these speakers and take them as far apart as possible in the room, so that the room, as an idea, becomes the inside of the drum. And the room is activated with these talks, and it's not loud at all, but it's so magic. It really works as like a transformation of a gigantic museum. It's not volume, it's not frequency range, it's not like the latest production technology. It's just 2 good Stäbchen microphones, you know, like these long ones. I don't know how you call them. I mean, very simple, everything, super simple. And that's it. Like, the magic of sound isn't technology, but at the same time, you shouldn't, I mean, technology is not an obstacle. It's a friend. Like, right, you negotiate with it and you work with it. And again, there is no limit to what you can do technologically if you have an idea. But we don't go for technology because it's appealing as technology. We go for it because we want to realize an idea, and then we got to have those tools. And if we don't have them, we got to build them.
I mean, it will become more an instrument if you start to create music within the system. So if you do from scratch, you have like the system, and you have some kind of synthesis sound generator or whatever. And then I'm sure you create music different if you are working with it inside the 360-degree system. We had this composer.
Marcin Pietraszewski,
Yeah. He built his kind of own synthesizer, or I think it's based on.
Yeah, new pulsar generator. He's a programmer. He has this super collider patch called new pulsar generator.
Yeah.
And he's doing a commission for CTM Festival, the same festival that commissions the large-scale AAI installation with the Spacemap system. So Marcin will also contribute a composition to that space. And he actually is using new pulsar generator to directly feed the system. It just comes straight out of the computer. And he is like taking the granular possibilities and the spectra that his patch is providing to like directly feed the PA. Which is pretty cool. It's
very direct, very strong sounds, and it fits totally with the speakers. It's really futuristic. And then when there comes the spatialization plus this incredible direct synthetic sounds, it's amazing experience. And he was like moving stuff, he was like taking this, that happens with everybody starting with the system. You program movements and stuff, but then he found out to record the movements from your Spacemap Go, and then kind of changing the movements in the recordings, cutting the samples, and it became a little bit cooler. But then he had this atmospheric, like cross modulations, like running through the room and circling. Yeah, this was really like, I think he wouldn't work that way if he just would work with a stereo system.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really interesting, and that brings me to the next question, which is, what are your kind of future near-term plans with live performance with Spacemap Go or spatial audio? You mentioned that. Can you tell me about this festival? When is it occurring? Is it occurring? What's the kind of setup? What are you doing with this festival?
CTM Festival, which is a festival that has been running for more than 20 years in Berlin. It's really a large scale festival for experimental music, but brings larger artists as well. It's kind of like a larger MOOC Fest idea maybe, but quite focused on art or electronic or experimental music. But a lot of people come and see it, so they can be very daring and sometimes challenging. and people accept it. And they have several venues in Berlin. And for the upcoming issue, which should have happened now in January, but they postponed into May, and things are reopening in May. In some sort of way, we just had an offer for the first live show this year in Austria for March. And they already laid out how they're going to run it and how they're orchestrating, like getting people in and how the seating works and so on. So this will slowly start again, and we're expecting summer to be quite busy. But May is when CTM Festival has this large scale hall basically in Berlin Wedding. It's a beautiful space, and we'll have, I don't know how many, 40 UP4 Slim or something, I can't remember. We made the design with IT Audio, an affiliate of Meyer, great company, until from IT, got in and like made a really good sketch for that space. So we'll go in there, we'll prepare everything here, and then we'll go into that room, and then we'll reconfigure a presentation of the album in that space. And yeah, that's the next thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it would have been nice to perform with an audience, but it still doesn't look like this because of this pandemic situation and the danger of being a super spreader event.
Well, it's really good to hear about your planning, and that sounds amazing. And who knows where we'll be in May? I can't predict, but yeah. I would.
The good thing is, like, even though you can't perform, the good thing is you have the system and you have like the experience of like the spatial sound situation. In a way, it's we can be happy to have.
Yes.
This opportunity to not to perform as a band, but having like a sound installation and something people can enjoy, walking through the composition, moving.
Actually, sorry to like extend the interruption, Steve, but that actually goes back to like an earlier question. The experience of hearing spatial audio and like engaging with this technology is changing a lot about your perceptual awareness. You make an you're having an experience which you otherwise wouldn't have, because you wouldn't be so aware of that possibility. But the experience you made, you keep carrying that with you. So you apply it to other situations as well. Your real world environment with no amplification whatsoever as well will be read differently. You will be able to, or you're not able to, but you want to explore what you already know differently with that new experience, with having made that experience of Spacemap. And you bring that back into Spacemap. So that dialogue has already started, and there is no way back. There will never be, a kind of a, we haven't experienced that, like, like this or something. I mean, it really, like, it just triggers the next thought, and you talk to another person, or like Jessica Ekomane, who's also doing a piece for CTM. She was here exploring the room, and she'll construct a completely different reading and different layout and different idea of what that system could be. And the more people hear these suggestions, like get these presentations, they'll be like, okay, there is definitely more than the idea of stereo. And I think there is a transition happening right now. And I don't want to be cynical, but I think stereo very soon, I think people will, there are already ways of like, having a much closer trigger of your auditory apparatus, of your neural network being triggered, sounds are being beamed directly into your ear, and so on. I think the experience of really moving in space, engaging with other people, engaging with sound in a larger scale situation, this is much more, in my opinion, the future than the idea of like building an even better stereo system. I don't think it would go away, but the competition there is much harder and much stronger than actually this new field that's opening up right now, which is rewarding in many ways, right? Not only listening.
I always thought about like, why? It's like have like speaker color, and you just draw you put the color on the wall and having it like as a huge speaker.
Yeah, that's Andy's big dream. He always wants to have a pot of speaker color, go into a space and paint some speakers on the wall, and then that wall would like give you sound.
Yeah, or like this artist like having body paint, like
Lumen
speaker color. Huh?
Like Lumen Group of sound.
Yeah,
the Blue Ear Group.
They will sound directly. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is a great place to wrap it up, I think. I want to thank both of you for joining this. This is a great talk. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks to our viewers for joining us today. We hope this session will inspire you to think about how you can explore spatial audio dimensions with your music. To schedule a Spacemap Go demo, please send an email to sales@meyersound.com. Oh, and get the album, AAI, it's fantastic. And also, you got to visit meyersound.com to learn more about Spacemap Go. There are lots of videos that show you exactly what it does, how to use it. And please join us tomorrow, January 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific, when we meet with Ed Sheeran's longtime production manager and front of house engineer, Chris Marsh, and audio systems engineer, Charlie Albin, to discuss all things touring and live sound. So here from NAMM, this is Steve Ellison, Meyer Sound, signing off, and thanking you once again for joining us in this Q&A.
Thank you,
It was nice to see you, Steve.
Thank you, Meyer. Thank you, Nam.
Yes. Hello to everybody.
Artificial fantasy.